So someone came by and did a criticism of one of my videos. Now, I'm going to state up front, I don't know whether my responses that are basically just clapbacks are accurate. I typed them up not giving a damn because I see that in other people posting to my videos, and I do a real quick check. Does the person upload videos? They don't have to, but do they? Do they have playlists that show a bias or not? And should that be important? Now, they had the channel for a very long time, and this is their first time communicating. Now, a couple of channels today that I looked at, when I evaluate other things, like does someone have a video of them trying to rescue an animal, I need to know, have they ever done it before? Look at their videos. They might leave links to them being a veterinarian. Why would they need my assistance if they're a vet? Well, you'd be surprised how many vets don't know how to take care of a bunny rabbit or a chipmunk or a squirrel or a bird. The majority of them don't know how to take care of animals. They know how to help them in an emergency, and that's it. But other people are well trained in rehabilitation, but they don't know how to deal with an emergency. So I try to include the information that's appropriate. One of the things I notice is a lot of people have channels where they were forced to set up a YouTube channel, never uploaded anything, and they use it to watch videos, and it allows them to communicate and comment, something that now YouTube and Google are basically trying to discourage people from doing. And some of them have lots and lots of playlists or just their favorites exposed, which I don't know if it's a good idea to let people see what your favorite videos are because they're going to make assumptions like maybe I would. But let's get that out of the way. Today's person commented under a video where I debunk, or more accurately explain, that no one tried to prove something accurately, and I'll repeat a little bit of the video content. 1984, BBC Micro, Doddleson Messages, Ken Webster, wrote a book called The Vertical Plane, and it's not unexplained phenomena in 1986 when he did the book. The messages that were supposed to either be from the year 2109 or the 1500s, like 1575, are messages that were received and or transmitted back and forth between these three time periods, according to this person, in a novel or a sci-fi book written by the individual. And very simply put, there is absolutely nothing in this. This is mysterious unless you decide that someone is unable to write a book and write a fictional book. Now, I don't know if you understand what I just said, but not everything written or uttered or explained or said in a story is accurate. Now, I want to point out that everyone who dramatizes something like this has to do certain things that are expedient or practical when you do so. If I do an explanation of this, I can't hold up a BBC microcomputer and the screen, and I can leave links to information about it, and I can try to explain it clearly enough that you can imagine what this is like. Next, a few details. This is back in the old days, 1980s, when a word processor was on it that had a specific name that was either a written piece of software on a floppy or a read-only memory module. The most commonly explained answer is it's a read-only memory module or a plug-in module. Sort of like a game cartridge you plug in, it would give you word processor ability. And that's actually very common at the time. And this would save things to a floppy disk, or it could save to tape drive, presumably. I mean, I don't know, but let's assume it could. Many computers at the time could do that. And if you were to watch someone do this, where they're sitting there reading a screen with information communicating with them from someone via email, you may have noticed in movies and TV shows, they have a voiceover artist affect an accent or play the part of the person communicating. But you do understand in the 1980s that not every computer had speech or audio capability, right? Okay. An economics teacher had claimed he'd received mysterious messages saved as documents on a floppy drive usually, while in Cheshire, England. This lasted from 1984 till they stopped in 1986. He wrote a book about the messages coming through a BBC Micro that had 16 kbytes of RAM or ROM that was expandable to a quarter megabyte. And it could have a 20 megabyte external hard drive or a 1.2 or 1.4 megabyte floppy drive if you did all of the updates. I put that in the description. There were 3 or more Telnet or BBS packages like Kermit that were available. So yes, this had the predecessor to the internet. And yes, BBSs, while they weren't really the internet, could interconnect as an internet or interconnected network. There was a primitive version of the internet. It's just that we had to traverse it. That's the fancy word I use. The other one is called slipping. There's a lot of expressions from this. I'm old enough to remember literally jumping from computer system to computer system at universities and finding random people logged in from their home computers and being able to tunnel into their machines because the security just wasn't used at the time because it was all based on a web of trust mostly. The claim is that this made sense, and I pointed out that if you were claiming that a person in the 1500s would know how to use a keyboard on a computer, much less any of the other presumptions we're going for, I pointed out that the first actual typewriters really weren't commonly available at the time and were mostly used by people who were blind trying to communicate with each other by imprinting or embossing things in paper, and this was a very limited occurrence. So having someone sit there and be able to figure out a keyboard, much less a word processor, is a bit of a fucking stretch for the 1500s. Number one. Number two, it's not a true story. It's a fucking it's a lie. It's a hoax. It's somebody wrote a book. Okay, that's it. But here's the next layer. Suspension of disbelief. I know that I'm going on and on here, and I'm sure that I'm doing this longer than the video. No, that video was almost 15 minutes, so I hope this won't be longer. But here we go with a very basic thing. Why do you need to believe for a fact that this is a person who is incapable of lying to you while writing a book for profit? The expression, I want to believe, is almost a mockery. I want to believe in things is good. But people who want to believe in things are often unable to critically analyze things. I guess you didn't read the book. This will come up in a minute, this person saying this to me. The 1500s gentleman didn't type his words, but spoke them into a machine brought to him from the future in 2109. That means it's a voice communication system. Now this is an assertion by a specific YouTube user. Okay. Let's go back to grounding it. It was a sci-fi book written by someone claiming to communicate with the dead or a person via time portal, or, in this case, another person using a time portal with voice communication. And again, in the 1980s, he wouldn't have expected a voice communication, and why not use a telephone? Why not use literally a tape recorder? If you're not aware of it, you can make a tape recorder directly become a sending and receiving audio device, aka a radio transmitter. There's several sci-fi stories that were available in any library if you were a kid in the 1970s, including one of them that was one of my favorite books because when I read it, I had dreams for years about it, where a kid gets a radio, and it's at a yard sale or at a store, it doesn't matter. This is the Magic Curio Shop type story. I'll explain that if you want to. He has a radio. And if he tunes it specifically to a certain thing, it's like the mysterious Channel 1 TV set mode. Yes, there was a Channel 1, by the way, a long time ago. But the kid tunes it, and it starts receiving things, and when he talks, he's heard, and he notices it has a transmit capability, or an intercom mode. And the whole story is him talking to somebody he can't see, and it's almost like his imaginary friend, and then it ends the story with someone years later finding the same radio. It talks through time and space. It's a simple story. It's fun. The story is told through this mode. The real story is their interaction and the kid coming out of his shell and deciding that both of them need to take a break from communicating with each other. And they found a friend. And they decide they'll never tell anybody about it. And of course, the friend they meet at school is the other person. One's the teacher, one's a student. And only the narrator of the story knows that. And it's a story about finding people and connecting. But it didn't really happen. However, it was based on, if you want to know it, the person who wrote that story was a young kid who became a ham radio operator, keying Morse code and communicating via voice. Amateur band. It's one of the reasons I got into radio. But it was a sci-fi book written by someone claiming a communication with either a person who's dead, as a dead person, and then later on via time portals. Mostly on a kitchen table near an exposed brick pillar. Messages on the home computer via Edward, cute name, a computer word processor on ROM, saved to floppy disk, and also later scrolling directly onto paper and the walls in chalk. Now it is spoken words instead, or so said this YouTube user who joined in 2010, has no vids, and insisted on saying, I didn't read the book. I then posted a link, archive.org, details the vertical plane, Ken Webster, mode 2 up, which means you can read the fucking book. Now, I'm obviously ignorant of everything here. The primary assertion is what I covered, not the secondary things, like a person in the 1500s was voice communicating with somebody in the year 2109. It's not relevant. This is a person claiming to have communicated in a sci-fi book, by the way, to have communicated their story and is giving you a retelling of something happening through a time portal. But from their perspective, there wasn't any voice communication, and only the BBC version has a voiceover reading of the screen, as it would be awkward to just point a camera at the screen. So I guess you didn't read the book either. Now, I don't know if you're getting this. This is partially ironic. I haven't read the book either. I haven't. I read a synopsis of it, and I read other people reviewing it and other people tearing it apart and debunking it. Nobody ever mentioned voice communication between the person who wrote the book and everybody else. Again, your assertion is, the 1500 gentleman did not type his word, but spoke them into a machine brought to him from the future. I understand that. Thank you for the information. It's not relevant because that's them communicating. The BBC Micro wasn't doing voice. Okay? If you have voice communication like I'm doing now, instead of us typing, you lose a lot of ambiguity unless you're trying to create ambiguous statements or someone doesn't get irony or humor. I could say, well, I'm totally agreeing with you when I'm not and being sarcastic. It's a bad idea to do that. So let's review. I haven't read the book, and I don't think you have either. But even if you did, it's not the relevant thing because the assertion was, this is a true story because someone said so. And it's impossible to do this through a computer because computer technology somehow makes it impossible for someone to just lie or just make up a story. And yes, the person writing the story, the man who made the book, could have been doing this as a goof back and forth with a friend at the computer and creating a plausibly deniable story so he could write a book, or all of it could literally be made up. Or it could be an example because of the other things it mentioned, like the place getting trashed a couple of times, actually many times, somebody nearby messing with them. So let's review. Let's do that really quickly. We found all the stuff piled up in the corner of the room, all the furniture piled up. Other strange occurrences. Let me explain this in very clear detail. If I come home and find all the furniture piled up in a corner, and the other person living in this building doesn't know how it got there, I'm not assuming it's ghosts. I'm assuming someone broke into the building because I live in reality. And in reality, my sleeping area or my work area can't have this happening. So the first thing that would happen is I would secure the windows. I would secure the door. I would set up motion-triggered cameras in the yard and inside. Fun story. I lived in what I call the hovel. It was a converted garage. I'm the one who converted it. I came home and found a few things knocked on the floor in a locked room where I had control over the doors. I locked it because I was using partially the locked doors and the framework that I put in to reinforce them to hold up the building. It was a hurdy-gurdy little shack. And when I got done, it was really durable. But I didn't know what was going on. So I put a piece of software not on this laptop, but on the laptop that held this hard drive before. I just finished cleaning the software off today. That's why I remember this. And it was a motion-triggered routine that would monitor the camera and do things playback. And record whatever's happening, too. Excuse me. And what did it find? There was, at one point, a mouse, and at another point, a squirrel that got into the place through a hole in the ceiling. So I found out where the hole was and plugged it. I'm not assuming boogeymen or ghosts. I'm assuming reality. If you decide, while in the English countryside, all alone in a cottage, that chairs piled up in a corner has to be signs of paranormal activity instead of your life potentially being in danger of somebody fucking with you, you're a fool. I want to believe equals getting dead. So no, I'm not listening to your critique of my video. And yeah, I haven't read the story in several years. It doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm talking about. But yes, you have a point you've made. I will say you're right at this point. I'm not being ironic. You're totally right in some of the things you're saying. But it doesn't change the fact that you're watching a BBC reenactment, and that's not really how they communicated for the most part. Thanks for watching. Have a good day and good luck with